Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games, and today I want to talk about a Switch 2 theory that's been going on for around like 5 or 6 months now actually. I just never got around to doing it, but I wanted to give my thoughts on it because I've seen a lot of people putting a lot of stake into this specific theory regarding the Switch 2, when it might release, and in this case, what colored buttons it might have. But I wanted to make a video on it and give my thoughts, even though it is a little bit of an older theory. I still have seen some people referencing it. So to catch you all up, the general idea is people think that the Switch 2 is releasing in 2024 and will have colored buttons based on the original button colors of the Super Famicom or Super Nintendo if you live in Europe. That is, of course, blue, red, yellow, and green. So people think the Switch 2, I guess Joy-Con version 2.0, right, or whatever the controller is, will have colored face buttons to kind of mimic the Super Nintendo. And the reason people think this is because a number of games coming to the Switch recently, or games that have already released actually, have colored buttons in the UI. So the two prominent examples from Nintendo itself are Super Mario RPG in the UI for that game, the face buttons for like A, B, X, Y, all that, right? They are colored on the UI when you're selecting an action, that kind of thing. For Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, they have went back and changed the color of those buttons. That one's a little bit more notable, and we'll talk about all of these in depth one by one. But then there are some third-party games. There are two notable ones that I've seen, the first of which being Fashion Dreamer. This is the new kind of Style Savvy game from Sin Sophia. It's basically the spiritual successor to Style Savvy. Nintendo did not publish this game. They do not own it, like they own Style Savvy. Marvelous published this game. But in that game, once again, the UI in the game uses the colored face buttons. And then the final example is Trails Through Daybreak Legend of Heroes, of course, from that very long series. And that game is also using colored buttons, once again, just in the interface. So because of all of this, people think that not only will the Switch 2 be backwards compatible, which I do agree with, I do think the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible, they think that Nintendo has briefed these developers on the new hardware, and because the Switch 2 is releasing in 2024, and they've been briefed on the hardware, developers are preemptively putting colored face buttons in their games to prepare for that. But let's break down each game individually and kind of talk about why I think the fact that these current Switch 1 games have colored buttons, I think a lot of this is just coincidence or either irrelevant. So the first one that people really started talking about was Super Mario RPG. Super Mario RPG is a Super Nintendo game. I don't really think you can look at that and think, wow, they really did something weird here, especially because there's a boss fight in the game that has a gimmick relating to the face buttons, where that boss will do something to disable your ability to use that button during that match. They kind of had to color code it for accessibility, so I think Super Mario RPG having these colored buttons is completely irrelevant. Trails Through Daybreak is a little bit more interesting. This is releasing in February, but I don't know, man. Once again, call me pessimistic. I feel like this would fall more under the category of coincidence, where Super Mario RPG, that is clearly them just replicating the original game and honoring its legacy. And then Fashion Dreamer and Thousand Year Door, which we'll talk about, this one feels, it's a little weird for sure, but to me it still just feels more like a coincidence than anything. Fashion Dreamer, I suppose, is maybe a little bit more interesting. However, just look at this game. Look at the box art. This is a very colorful game. I don't think it's that much of a stretch to assume they would just make the face buttons colored. I don't really think that's that unreasonable to expect this very colorful, stylistic game to have colored face buttons. It'd be very weird, if anything, for them to just have white face buttons for the UI. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, maybe you can put some more stock into this one. I don't really think it would make sense for them to make a Switch 1 game have these colored face buttons, because it's a Switch 1 game. If it was a game with unannounced platforms, then sure, there would definitely be a conversation to be had there. But this is a Switch 1 game releasing, I guarantee you, before the Switch 2. It doesn't really make sense to add those colored buttons. Maybe they just want to have it line up more with this new era of Mario RPGs, where Mario RPG, and then by extension Thousand Year Door, have the same colored face buttons. Of all these games, Thousand Year Door is the most suspicious, I will give you that, but I don't really think it means anything. So yes, that is the theory. That is what has been the subject of so many posts online and theory videos on YouTube about the Switch 2, and I haven't covered it at all until now because honestly I thought it was stupid and would just blow over, but people have really stuck with this theory, and there's not enough substance to this. The idea would be that Nintendo has briefed these developers on Switch 2 hardware, and that's why they're implementing these colored face buttons to prepare for backwards compatibility. That's understandable enough, I guess. But why these developers in particular? You have Sin Sophia, a developer that has not put out a game since a style-savvy game on 3DS like 6 years ago. You have Falcom, who releases pretty popular but still kind of niche JRPGs. And then, of course, Nintendo itself with Intelligent Systems making Thousand Year Door and Square Enix / Arte Piazza for Super Mario RPG. Why only these 4 games? You would think if they really were briefing developers on the future hardware, getting them prepped for backwards compatibility, more developers would be taking advantage of this and prepping, I guess, if that's the word you want to use, for the Switch 2. Why hasn't Bandai Namco released any games with colored buttons? Why doesn't the new Naruto Storm game have colored buttons? Why hasn't Koei Tecmo released anything? They released Fate Samurai back in September, but why didn't that have colored buttons? It's just like, to put this much stock into a theory when only 2 third-party games are using it and 2 first-party games are using it, I don't know, man. I haven't done the proper research to go back and look through, like, other Switch games, but I feel like you could probably find a decent number of Switch games that already had Famicom-inspired colored face buttons. I don't think this is really a new thing. You're just kind of looking for patterns to support the idea that the Switch 2 is releasing next year and is backwards compatible. And also, if this were the case, why doesn't Princess Peach Showtime have colored face buttons? Why doesn't Luigi's Mansion 2 HD have colored face buttons? It's a coincidence, guys. And even then, the idea that they would put these colored face buttons into games just because the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, in my opinion, is really dumb. These are Switch 1 games. Thousand Year Door is a Switch 1 game. It will sell primarily on Switch 1. Even if the Switch 2 comes out before Thousand Year Door Remake, it is still going to sell best and primarily on Switch 1 because it is a Switch 1 game. I don't think they would change the UI to placate backwards compatibility. That's never been a thing that's ever happened in the past. Now, let me be clear here, I think it's possible that the Switch 2 has colored face buttons. I don't think that's unreasonable to expect. And I definitely think the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible with Switch 1 games, so you will be able to play Super Mario RPG and Thousand Year Door on the Switch 2 when it releases. But to me, this whole thing just feels like such a stretch in logic and reasoning just to support the idea that maybe the Switch 2 is A, backwards compatible, and B, releasing next year, because if they're showing it to developers, I guess that is why they think it would be releasing in 2024, but I don't think so, man. So that is going to do it for this video. I just wanted to talk about this theory because it's been going around for a while, and I mean, it's fine. It's a fun little theory, I guess, but I just see so many people, like, people are bringing this thing up on Twitter. Like, every day I see a post about it, and I'm just like, really? This is what we're focusing on? So I wanted to talk about it, give you my thoughts, and of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch 2 reviews, news, coverage, all that fun stuff. I will be doing more and more Switch 2 videos as we get closer to the new year, but also just next year, because I do think it'll be announced in 2024. I just don't think it'll release then. So that is going to do it. Of course, stay tuned here for more videos, and follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames. Until next time, folks, peace!